Good afternoon, everyone. BC Richfield here, coming to you live from London. It's just gone a couple of minutes past midday here, making it a few minutes past 1100 UTC. A really big shout out to everybody joining the stream live today, as well as all of you watching this on catch up, and a special mention as well to our good friends over at Binance and OKX who are joining us today for the live stream. We've been getting 12,000 of you recently. So a really, really big thank you to all of you for tuning in and listening to my Monday and Wednesday ramblings. So what I'm going to try and do today is make it less of the ramble and more of the charts, okay? So I want to hear from you guys. What is it that you would like to see today? What would you like to see? Please just pop it in the description, all right? You can just pop it in the message, in the chat, and we will take a look at as many tickers as we can. Lucerino, good morning, my friend. Right, so let's get ourselves grounded. What are we going to do? We're going to cover Bitcoin. We're going to cover Bitcoin dominance. Bitcoin's looking strong at the moment, right? So let's take a look at that. Soman Aslam. Hello, my friend. You've YouTube about to skyrocket. Please do one next moon next. I hope so, brother. Thank you for your support. Please do Tierra XRP. You know what? We'll make that right top of the list for you, mate. We're going to do Bitcoin, Bitcoin dominance, ETH, XRP. It would be remiss of us to not take a look at Asta, and also as well stable. All right. Craigie boy is in there, wants to see a little bit of Solana. I think we can do that for you, mate. We can certainly take a look at Sol. So we're going to do Bitcoin, Bitcoin dominance, ETH, XRP, Asta, stable, Solana, Johnny England. What a name. Absolutely love it. Right, ZEC, we can do that. So massive. XRP, XRP, XRP. Love it. Right, FET, CRV. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Just got a couple of messages coming in as well. Let's take a look. Solana. Ali Nawaz, of course, my friend. We certainly take a look at that today. Wisdom Linus, hello again, mate. Do you think we could close above 117k today? Well, let's take an absolute look. I mean, it looks like he's gunning for it at the moment. Bucky, sir. PV, sorry, mate. Do you have a ticker for that, just so that I get the right one? And I will absolutely jump on board that. Actually, I need to make a list for CRV as well. Wonderful. All right. So before we jump into this, you know, a lot of people at the moment kind of wondering why we were kind of seeing that dip. If we look at equity markets as well, they took a little bit of a hit, you know, kind of through the last few days. And, you know, there's just a little bit of uncertainty in the market at the moment. I lay out my thoughts on that from a macroeconomic standpoint, as well as everything from a fundamental news drivers and major effects that are coming up throughout the week on Monday's show. So please take a look at that. All of it's completely is still valid and relevant. What I want to do very quickly before we dive into this and before we dive into the charts is take a look at the news. Now, the news is always important, right? It really, really, really helped my career immeasurably when I started paying attention a lot more to the macro side of news, the catalyst that can involve, what it does to markets, how it rips liquidity away from markets, how it injects volatility into markets. So we're going to have a very, very quick look at what we've got, because we covered Monday through to Tuesday. Now, obviously, we are here on Wednesday. This was really important, right? Now, the Jolt job openings we saw on Tuesday, and people might think, well, actually, Tuesday wasn't exactly the most bullish day, and they would be absolutely right. Although there were more job openings here, projected was 7.19. Yeah, they actually got 7.23. You think, well, that's great. There's more job openings showing a healthier economy. Problem is, a lot of the rate cut expectations at the moment are pinned on this soft labour market. And what that means is while unemployment is rising, while there's less jobs available on the market, there's a threat to the labor market in the US. And while growth is fairly stable, inflation is relatively stable as well, with interest rate cuts, Powell mentioned that this was more of a risk management measure against the softening labor market. So with the jobs coming in a little bit stronger here, we're now looking at that little bit of a resurgence through here. And now that could, apologies, and dogs sneezing in the background, that could lead us through to people thinking that there might be a rate cut hesitation here from the Fed, all right? So it's no surprise to me to see Bitcoin kind of showing some strength here. We've seen it coming back as well. We're going to take a look at that in equities as well. But remember, whilst Bitcoin draws that liquidity out of the market for these really key risk assets or beta risk assets, then it's really, really difficult for alts to have a run. You will get the outliers that will pop off. And as we've been talking about this whole cycle, we've been really, really locked in with members as well. Wonderful head of fundamentals for us over at the Birb Nest, guy called KZM. This has been the thought process throughout this, is this flight to quality. When a market becomes oversaturated, like we've seen with the amount of altcoins, then ultimately investors are going to be more selective. And that's what we're going to look at today. Rob Bull, of course, we will take a look at Asta for you, my friend. I'm invested in Asta myself, so definitely keen to see how that's getting on. Anyway, this is a week that's really a lot about the jobs, the unemployment, all right? So here we are on Wednesday. What surprises we got today are really important. ADP, non-farm employment change, all right? Again, seems crazy, right? But you want to see this figure flat or, a little bit lower. And, while that sounds horrible to wish, a small contraction, shall we say, in the job market in America, it's typically really good for risk markets, right? And that's what we're all in the game for. ISM manufacturing PMI and ISM manufacturing prices. Now, manufacturing's a really interesting one as well at the moment. It's something the US are trying to bring back on board. What you want to see as we're looking at this is if the figure gets over 50, okay, we see the last print was 49, the one below that, 48.7. Below 50, the industry typically considers it in a state of contraction, and above it, expansion, all right? So again, look at how that plugs into the economy, the health of the economy in the United States. Our focus is always on the US because it's the biggest market in the world. It affects most other markets in the world, and the dollar is the world reserve currency, all right? Unemployment claims on Thursday is massive. Again, it plays into the labor market explanation that I just gave out, right? Again, don't want to see that spiraling out of control, but you certainly don't want to see that coming really strong if you are invested in risk markets. If it does, then we need to be a little bit careful. And then we've got a real beast to end on Friday: average hourly earnings month on month, non-farm employment change, and unemployment rate, followed by ISM services PMI. So again, just make sure you're factoring these things in. Most of this information will already be priced in by markets. They're an incredibly efficient vehicle at doing so. So you often don't get the surprise that you think. A lot of people see these news events drop into the market, and I thought this for years as well. And you see these wild pumps on the low time frames where the market just seems to wipe liquidity both sides. Actually, it's market makers taking the passive orders off the books while the market kind of opens and digests the news. So just be aware of these. Again, a lot of this depends on what kind of time frame trade you are. As somebody like myself, who's very much an intraday trader, these can be really, really good and important injections of volatility into the market, all right? But our view today, as it has been moving on, is on the higher time frame. And, it's always nice as an analyst or as a trader or anybody that shares their thoughts and plans, especially publicly, to see those thoughts and plans start to pay off. So where are we here? We've got the daily chart here of Bitcoin. Just let me show you this very, very quickly on the weekly as well. Why these key levels are here. What have we been looking at? So as we can see here, massive level here. This was the January high from this year. Look what a job it did of suppressing the market through here. We got this breakout. What did we want to see? We want to see this area retested. We actually retested the all-time high that was made after that here as well, which is the thinner red line at the top. We see we got that initial action, but look at this level, right? This seems a relatively benign level to be talking about. The high of the week starting the 7th of July. What's really special about that high? Well, if you just take a look at the candles, the high of this week has capped the market, until this very day. All right, so we had stopped here, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks of price really trying to hammer above this. And what I mean is the wicks tell us what price tried to achieve, right? The bodies tell us what it actually did. So here the bulls tried incredibly hard to drive above this level. Buyers were trying to gain control of the market. Ultimately, the sellers won out here. That weakness trapping us back below this level here is ultimately what then led to the sell-off. You know, if you want to study markets, it's so important that you understand auction market theory, the way that price is always in an auction. It will really help you understand the dynamics of price. How I trade particularly is looking for these key liquidity pockets, points of reversal and continuation, waiting for those sharp moves that catch traders offside, that catch sellers offside, that catch buyers offside. And then when they're quickly recovered, what you often see then is the party that's on the wrong side of that is going to look to cover, close their positions out, or join the side of the trade that you're in when you get those large expansions. All right. So anyway, back to a daily here, because I think the daily is so very clean. This has been our key area. You can see this for a number of weeks. This is the consolidation that led to the breakout. All right. These areas are really key. If think about it logically, if the buyers are there in strength, why wouldn't they be here again? Here we got some moves off of here, lovely move off of here, and we've come into this once again. Now, one thing I did that I was looking at that I really wanted to see were these equal lows run, the lows from back here, all right, all the way along, and we didn't quite get that. As far as I'm concerned, that's the market showing strength here. Now, we're going to look at how this relates to the altcoins and that, because you might think, BC, what the hell are you talking about, right? Like, some of my altcoins are down, 40% in the last couple of days. It's understanding how that capital rotates through the market. And typically, while everything's quite strong here for Bitcoin, we'll see alts potentially struggle because of the liquidity coming in. So on Monday, we set out a really clear plan. The dotted line on here represents the breaker. This kind of grey-blue box is the key pivot or support and resistance. Price broke through, found support here, closed beneath, couldn't get back above, sell off, back above, found support in here, then we closed underneath. So the plan was, if we find rejection here, we trade it lower down to these equal lows. If we close above, first of all, this, which should be resistance now, turning that back to support, take out this high shifting market structure. Okay, this is what's important. So as we move up here, we see the impulse move coming higher and we set the breaker. So the plan on Monday was very clear. Close above, retested this area R for buying. All right. And in terms of this, I must have taken this high off. Let me just re-add it. Right. Oh, hang on. In terms of this through here, what I'm looking at now is this is the key point, or actually probably these, right, with a little bit more information. We can get rid of this now, because we've got this untapped high here and we've got this untapped high up here. All right, now the high that's sat here is 117.877. So wisdom, Linus, as we spoke, as you asked earlier, my friend, can we get above 117k today? I think we absolutely can. If I'm looking at the chart here, right, I know I've got a key liquidity pool here. It very much depends what kind of time frame you're looking on. If you're looking at this on a higher time frame, I would very much be looking at these kind of key pivot points, right? So if we look and focus through here where we see all these downside wicks, we saw a large expansion price within here. Yeah, this is where the market's considered value or balanced. Then we have that move to the offside, right? Market's now out of balance, seeking new balance. It finds support here, comes back within the range here, and then we get a fake out. Ultimately, what the market did here that was quite brutal was this. Deviation, step back in. Yeah, so when you step back into the range, you look for expansion to range high, either via a POC, yeah, your point of control if you're a volume trader, or via a midline. And then, when we got this breakout here, if you weren't paying attention to this high, I think people got really horny for this breakout. Price, what did it do? Close back within the range here, set the bearish breaker. Price ultimately sold back off to range lows. All right. So as I'm looking at this across here, I can see there was key support through here. What I can also see is there's key resistance here and here. So if I just take a line out and just put a rough area through here, and how I do that is I typically try and focus on getting as many of the wicks as I can, but try not to violate the bodies. This gives us a strong close above this level here. We can see all the retesting through when price sold off, or it came back to this level. Then, as I did with the box down here, I'm then just going to take a box out. And what I want to do is just kind of create an area here that really embodies as many of the wicks, again, both ways. And then I give myself a better idea of the area that price needs to get back above. Now, this being the prior all-time high, I don't exactly expect price to just smash into that, find resistance and come back down. I would expect, because of the stops being left above these highs, or the liquidity that's there, they're probably a more likely point of reversal. So the best way that I would try and play this, is looking for price to have, first of all, a strong reaction above here, get back to this area here, any kind of wicks below and recoveries, that's when I think we start to make the move higher. I think the other type of trade that we could look at here is seeing price have a rejection from here after taking out this high, or maybe these highs as well. That would be the best case scenario. Then seeing a corrective move down here before then taking that move higher. What I would want to see in here is some kind of order block set, or some kind of inefficiency, some kind of gap that price can draw back into, find that support. Maybe we see a small consolidation within here before price then gets the strength to have the next leg up, all right? In terms of that plan, it's so clear on the daily. I don't really want to add any extra complexity, but if I'm dropping this down to the 4 hour, just to see how obviously these can be played. So what are we looking at here? This is Monday's trading. What happened here? We closed out, came into Tuesday. What did we see? We saw the draw come back down here. We got this beautiful setup from this gap here, this inefficiency. And then we saw price have the expansion higher. So what I would want to see if price does have this kind of move is something like this kind of expansion, price returning to one of these gaps, one of these inefficiencies. This is basically when the market's one-sided, buyers stepping in so aggressively here that you'll basically look at price just slipping higher and higher and higher, people continuing to buy at higher prices, continuing to buy at higher prices. So our opportunity here, because we never want to be FOMO traders, is to look for price to pull back to these key areas. So if at the moment we left this intact and came back down to test this area, this consolidation, and we got a lower time frame set up here, longs up into this level are a great way to build a shorter term trade that you could look to pyramid if you then start to get those breakout levels confirmed on the higher time frames. What it means is that you can start building positions that get into profit. And then you're basically saying to yourself, okay, well, I can now gamble some or all of that profit if you want to without risking your account. The key thing here is to make sure you're entering, with never more than 2% of your account. I honestly recommend people do like 0.25 or even 0.5%, right? Because it allows you to be nimble and you won't be so emotionally drained by the trades. Once you place the trade, and the great Brent Donnelly said this, once you place a trade, you're just an emotional wreck. Everybody is. You're invested in the trade, right? So you need to make your clear decisions before you make the trade, and that's why trading plans are so important. So really clear plan, pullbacks to this area as long as we don't take this out first, or pullbacks after a rejection to this area, looking for longs. If not, we want to see more consolidations made around these areas. But for me, the clearest play by a long way is here on the daily, either drawing back here to push higher or seeing that rejection here. If we did really manage to break above this, so let's just say, for example, price just absolutely skyrockets, we get a rejection here, yet we hold this level, right? No problem. The key thing here is just not allowing yourself to get involved in this move while it's doing this, because there's as much chance it gets back in the range and sells off. It seems like a really difficult thing to do, but waiting for confirmation is often the best way to trade, all right? So Bitcoin, that's where we are. It's taking a lot of liquidity out of the market at the moment. Let's take a look and see Bitcoin dominance. Really interesting one, right? So we've been looking at this. These are the really key levels, just to give you guys some context. With this massive rising Bitcoin dominance over here. If I just quickly put Ethereum on the chart as well, you can see what happens as Bitcoin dominance is going up here. Look what happens to ETH and alts. When Bitcoin dominance starts to drop, that liquidity floods into the altcoin market, and then we start to see those moves. Where it is at the moment, I'm happy with. This has always been a key level for me, 57.71%. It's a basic kind of key pivot that we've had through price for a while. And what we want to see is price breaking out this consolidation to the downside and continuing down to our next key area of interest here, which is around about 56. Ultimately, if you want the altcoins to really be pumping, what you want to do is see this as low as possible. Right, so let's take a look. We're going to rip through now. We've got it nice. We've got about 40 minutes left in the show, so that has worked out absolutely perfectly. I'll take a quick sip of tea and let's dive into ETH. Actually, remiss of me, I've let some of the comments slide here. Let me take a look. Rob Ball, absolutely going to take a look at Asta for you, my friend. Easy new all-time high next. Beware of scam weeks down. Yeah, always a good point, especially if you're trading futures. Excellent. Jojo, hello, mate. Good to see you, my friend. Resistance at 117.232. Nice. So many saying Bitcoin dominance will crash. Free fall incoming. Well, for all of our alts, mate, I hope you are correct. So just before we pop on to the others, I just want to kind of take a look at this for you. This is the NASDAQ, the NQ contract. All right. So the reason that I want to just show you this is we are often, yeah, at the moment we're seeing, especially with Bitcoin, that aligning itself incredibly strongly with equity market and things like indexes like the NASDAQ. All right. If we just get Bitcoin on here. Yeah, you can see it's a little bit more erratic, but typically what is good for the goose is good for the gander, right? Especially if we move this onto a line chart as well, you can see that they pretty much been moving down, moving up. You've got a few little areas of decoupling in here. This was the most interesting one actually through here when we saw price really kind of selling off through here, but actually the NASDAQ remains strong. A lot of people want to see this decoupling so it becomes more like, digital gold, right? So it's like that. Yeah, well done, Jojo. Thank you. So far, we're going to go on to Ethereum after this, and we're going to look at XRP, Asta, Stable, Solana, ZEC, FET, CRV. So hopefully we got all them coming, but thank you very much. And do please remind me if I forget anything. While we have strong equity markets, right, let's take a look as well, if you would like, tickers like Apple, Amazon, Google, right, Meta, Microsoft, Nvidia, Tesla, the big tech names that really make up the key part, or a huge part, sorry, of the NASDAQ, also the S&P 500. So what we're looking at here is really interesting. We can see that, the global liquidity flows are there for risk assets. People are talking about this idea that Nvidia and these AI companies are forming this bubble. There's two trains of thought on that. One is that if you look at the amount of money being invested in the space, especially in the US, versus the earnings that are being generated, that looks a little bit bubbly. I think it's like several 100% more has been invested than has been returned. But they're early stage infrastructure, right? That's building these systems out. Everything's very new at the moment. That's often an upfront investment that is looked to get back over time. Yeah, you're right, Wisdom. Tesla has been showing some stubbornness just in this little consolidation. Now I think it pops, but this was brutal for people, especially while the indexes were going mad. But this was all, Trump coming into the White House, Doge, the Department of Government Efficiency, the little war with Elon, and the look at the kind of pullback on the EV subsidies and bits and pieces. But it is an interesting point. I think we start breaking out from this area here around about the 443.5. I think this thing rips up into the highs over here. Good morning, Shai. How you doing, mate? So just looking at it like that. The other part, just to finish off there on Nvidia, is that they keep smashing earnings, right? I was listening to an interview with the head of equities at Goldman Sachs yesterday, and he said something really, really simple. He said, basically, our major plan at the moment is to be long equities and risk and to be long gold. And we don't see that changing in the near future. Why not? Well, think about it. You're looking at potential fiscal stimulus or quantitative easing coming in next year. You've got a huge bond buyback coming in 2026. You've got Jerome Powell, head of the Federal Reserve, stepping down, and a potential Trump sympathizing, well, really need to come up with a better term for it than this, but a Trump supporting candidate getting into the Fed. And as he tried to remove Lisa Cook recently, he really wants to gain control of the Fed, get interest rates down a lot, and really, really drive that economy. The risk from that side is that it drives inflation up, and we kind of get into this little bit of a problem. But at the moment, they're pushing pretty hard, and inflation's showing itself to be relatively robust. We're still seeing the tariffs wash through, which people thought was going to completely derail the market, and it simply hasn't. Bringing a lot of income into the US. It's still a little bit of an unknown. We saw that big spike, in PPI recently as well, where, basically people were stockpiling before the tariffs came in. So as those stockpiles diminished, then people were having to buy the goods with the import tariffs on them. The big question is, do we see that turn up in CPI, the consumer price index? Are the consumers suffering for it as those kind of diminishing profits get added on as cost that goes to the consumer? And we're not really seeing that at the moment majorly, but we do need to be careful. Jojo, who you can see in the comments here, who's who's over with us at the Birb Nest and community manager over there, a very, very knowledgeable traditional market trader as well as crypto. We were having some discussions yesterday about the fact that China are currently going into a large public holiday, right? That's going to keep the market shut for most of the week. We're looking at, poly markets at the moment having the US shutdown, really, really starting to get priced in. So I did some really deep research on this last night, guys. I spent 3-4 hours really diving in, absorbing as much as I could in a short period of time, I appreciate, but looked at the historical statistics of previous shutdowns. Now, they vary in lengths of time, but actually they really haven't been bad for risk markets, which surprised me a little bit, actually. So, people, I think, were positioning for this to be really, really kind of bad news, to take these impacts. The market just keeps wearing them. And what I mean by that is you keep getting this negative stuff come in, the negativity. The market has these little pullbacks, absorbs it, and keeps moving forward. Ultimately, you don't really want to kind of stand in the way of this freight train of a risk market at the moment, in my opinion. However, it doesn't mean that positioning for it is particularly easy. Right, so that little bit for you all. Hopefully some of you found that interesting. What I want to do now is go on to ETH and show you our plan that we had. I think we did this for our friends over at Binance with our wonderful squiggle time. You can see the magic of and power of the squiggles. All right, so we're now at this stage here. Remember, this is the consolidation we were looking at across here. So price either stepped back into this range and broke down from it, in which case we'd look to target this beautifully circled area. Yarek, my friend, how are you doing? Wisdom, sorry, mate, do you think this government shutdown is a setup to boost crypto market because it's looking like it's pre-planned? I think that's a very contrarian and an interesting view, and I like it. Probably. I imagine markets are much more manipulated by governments and stuff like that than anybody would ever think. But the one thing we can't do about it is we will never really know. But I think it's a very, very interesting point. Basically looking for this pullback in risk, looking for this consolidation in crypto so that people can start positioning and really kind of pump this. Going to be difficult to get crypto on the balance sheets of a lot of these, major institutions and stuff like that. As again, we're looking at more ETFs, we're looking at, the stable coin regulations coming through. Basically, I think they're going to want it lower, right? Otherwise, they're not really going to get it past their risk managers. There's going to be a chance, and I have had some real interesting risk managers over the years. Yarek, how are you doing, brother? It's good to have you here. Just getting started. Love that. So this is where we are with ETH anyway. This plan's a little bit more for the 4 hour, right? But this was the key area for me. So the plan was really, really simple. Is why we lost this. Is this a deviation? Do we climb back above this level here, which is 4063.5? And if we do, then the chances are we see this expansion. But just showing a little bit of caution here because this was the consolidation before price really dropped. All right. If any of you understood that from my wild screen squiggles, absolutely good luck to you. But, plan is here, right? Price is now back in here. This is the squiggle consolidation, and we're now getting the expansion, right? This ultimately was the prior point of value. Yeah. Price broke down from here seeking new value. Yeah. Found support at the top of this prior range. Price has now expanded back into here, and it's within this area, right? So if we just kind of, I wonder if I can find these, turn these squiggles off for a sec, as much as it breaks my heart to see such beautiful art going to waste. Look at this consolidation here, focusing mostly on the body. So we've got this as like a range, yeah? Let me do it in an obnoxiously bright color so it stands out. What you're seeing here is the market imbalance here. This is where people consider it fair value. Then price breaks out aggressively. Now, if price stepped back in the range here, we would naturally trade it back to the liquidity of the highs. But these strong breakdowns here, sometimes you can look at these as well with the use of like a CVD, which can help to make sure that that's aligned with what we're seeing from cumulative volume. But with this breakdown here, and especially when we then lost this support level, or potential support level, because it was a key liquidity and we had this consolidation here, we can see the price then broke down here. This pullback ultimately was for then was for shorting, because price sellers are in control of the market. Buyers had the opportunity to take control back here because of the liquidity resting below this. They could have gobbled that up if they wanted to, use those sell orders that were breaking out down here as people's stop losses got taken out. Obviously, breakout traders triggered as well, use that big pool of liquidity to fill a massive set of orders and set the market higher. They did not take that option. All right, ultimately what we got is price deviated below here. Then we set a new consolidation here, broke out from this. Where do we stop? The prior consolidation. That's what we're in now. And this is the squiggle breakout that we've been looking for. So ETH looking very healthy here, all right? However, let's just pop back to the daily just for a moment and still really appreciate the fact that we have had this quite large sell-off in the price, all right? So as we're looking at this here, saying to ourselves, all right, this is starting to look good, but we need to see some structure starting to be built, all right? So we've got that on the 4-hour, all right? We can see this nice bullish structure, and this really is nice. This is as clean as structure gets, really. Small consolidation, expansion, small consolidation, expansion, consolidation, expansion, consolidation, large expansion again, right? You can see the impulse from price as it's moving higher, actively seeking buyers at higher prices. And what's happening? Those buyers are buying it at higher prices, telling you that they're hungry for this, right? So as we sit with this here, I think price is looking quite good. I think I would really like to see price kind of, if we look across here, right? If I'm just looking at all of these lows within here, let me just get the line out and say, okay, let's run the same exercise. How many of these can I get? How many wicks can I get while still kind of respecting most of the bodies? Let me zoom in for you guys, actually. Yeah, so we got all these wicks through here. Because look, there's clearly something stopping the market, yeah? Buyers were very active here, very, very active in trying to recover the market. Sellers kept trying to push it back down. Ultimately, they lost out. And then you see that expansion when the buyers really take control. And the sellers give up. They join either the move to the upside, or they step out of the way, or they're looking to cover, and then price really kind of explodes. So as we look at that along there, I quite like this. We can see price wicking into here. So if I look across here, I can say to myself, well, actually, what's the kind of, is there any consolidation or key area through here that's affecting not just this, but this? And if I kind of look at that across and look at the green line and I say, well, yeah, this, right? The down move here, price then exploded higher from here. This was ultimately, as far as I see it anyway, the consolidation where buyers were positioning aggressively that led to this huge pump. So I think we should be seeing, or I would be thinking, this will be a good area to see. We highlighted this as the larger area, right? Absolutely. But now we can really start to refine this. So if I look at this from the high to the low, yeah, and I'm just taking it from the high to the low of these down close candles, the bearish candles through here, because when we closed above this, price dipped into this, and this is where the buyers really stepped in. So I'm going to get rid of the line now, and I'm just going to draw this across and say, okay, what impact has this area had? And I think quite significant, right? I'll just leave it in that really bright color at the moment. Now, yes, it's a large area, but this was the consolidation that supported price all the way through here, right? The breakout didn't only lead to one of these huge moves higher. The consolidation, price consolidating above this beautiful rounded bottom as buyers really started to ramp up and send it higher. So this was really key for us in terms of shorting through here, because we understood that this was such a key area, right? If the buyers now weren't going to step in here, and look how I just sliced through it. There's just nobody there, right? Price slices through and then look, tries to get back above. We can see this has now turned from support to resistance and selling off. So my playbook here for ETH is just to see us establish ourselves above this, right? I'm going to draw this across a little bit here, make this a bit broader. That's what I want to see here, right? I want to see price strongly above this, come back down. Let's see a short consolidation in here. And then let's look to break out. Again, I would be looking at this kind of level here. Originally, I'd try and kind of start getting into positions here on the lower time frames, looking for that expansion higher, all right? So just let's be aware of the levels. But while this looks strong, it should ultimately be good for alts. Right, sip of tea, and then we're going to rip through our alt list. Here we go. Right, so let's take a look at XRP for the XRP army. Here we go. See, do not mess with the squiggles, right? We obviously did this a little bit back, but what have we got here? Price come in. We found support in this area. We've driven down into it. Look at how price reacts, yeah? This is really, really key. This is just a little bit of a nothing box, really. It was very difficult to see, but it was clear that when we were through here, yeah, we'd had two really good points of support through here. So breaking down below this, as lower squiggle number one says, and a retest of this, I would have been looking for price to potentially get a lot lower here on XRP, right down into the early twos. Why? Because it's just a hugely inefficient move higher, and they often get retraced quite aggressively. So price did hold it, and we have got the expansion higher. And the plan here, or the safest version of this plan, the reason that we got this dotted line, right, is this is the kind of consolidation here that led price lower. Price has now come back at this quite aggressively. This is the origin of where the sellers continued their control of the market here. If we see these retraced and we see those sellers offside again, what are we looking to do here? We're looking for the people that are in pain. We're looking for where the squeeze is. Okay, we're looking for that situation where you see the buyers really try and step in here, for example. Beautiful buying strength. We get this consolidation. Buyers attempt aggressively to get the market pushed higher. But ultimately what happens? They get the market up into here, sweep an internal low, and then we take the body of that here. And that's the area that we then look to short the market, right? Why? Because price is heading higher. People are expecting higher prices. Anybody that's not noticed that price is finding resistance through here, right, which is aligned with where we had this point, then price corrects lower. No problem. I would absolutely myself be looking for long positions within this gap. Yeah, price comes into here, and we would have got some starters, right? This little move in here, some positions to the highs, nice high taken. Early stage people, well, so well-versed traders will understand that as you're taking highs like this and you start to see price pull back, you want to be a little bit cautious. So that's when you need to be flexible with your thought process here, because while you're kind of shifting your thoughts to these things are going to absolutely moon, you're looking to position yourself into other altcoins, you're getting your deep research done on what projects could follow XRP in this nature. What happens is the market has a very subtle shift against you here. Right, but actually this is where the buyers are trapped offside. This is where the buy aggression happened. Buyers stepping in, nice consolidation. Buyers stepping in, we see the weakness here. No reason buyers shouldn't be able to get above this level here if they're really strong. Yeah, ultimately sellers won out, and then look how price finds resistance through here and sells off. Right, so why is that important? Well, it's kind of what we're looking at over here. Yeah, so XRP making this kind of nice move up at the moment, but similar situation, aggressive sellers here, right? A lot of people shorting the market here. Now with this move higher, yeah, it's getting back to the origin of where those sellers really continued their domination or their dominance of the market. Getting back above here, they're going to either have to ask themselves a question, if they've already not been stopped out, how much drawdown they're willing to hold through. Price continues to show strength here. Then often what we see are these nice kind of returns to source, and then it allows any shorts within here to close out at minimal loss, and then they can jump on the trend higher. So that's what we're going to do, and we're just going to leave the chart like that. I don't know why. Some on the daily charts, these squiggles look fine. Others, you really can't just draw a straight line. But yes, Jack, yes, right. Can't complain about everything. Hey, Nip, my man, how are you doing? One of the oldest supporters of this channel and my work since I came into cryptocurrency. Great to see you here, my friend. Wisdom, thank you very much. And so, man, I'm trapped from 3.05. What, on XRP? Let's take a look. Right, did you say 3.05? Oh, okay, that's not too much of a trap there, though, is it? So you're around about here. Yeah, you're around about here. Well, I think this is probably quite pertinent for you then, my friend, because again, don't hold on to trades expecting them to recover. If you're really overexposed to it, you can lessen the position size as you start to get closer. Look, if you do that and then price rips, just be comfortable with it, all right? But you are getting closer to that position here. So this is what I'd really be looking for here, right? Is this area to be closed above and then this start to hold. Don't mind seeing kind of wicks down into this area and see them recovered. That's a really good sign of absorption, right? But what I really wouldn't want to see here is price get above and quickly get back down below. I think that could mean that we're into flush out lower. If you are not over leveraged, and again, for anybody listening here, I really wouldn't recommend using leverage in these markets. Especially how they're trading at the moment. Be very, very careful. It's an incredibly quick way to get poor. And if you're going to look at it like this, just be really, really careful with the exposure. If you can hold through this, the macro environment still looks quite good. If we look at, liquidity, global liquidity, if we look at the kind of bigger picture, for want of a more refined statement, then I think things look okay, right? So I am expecting more upside for crypto. How that plays out, we've just got through September, 1st of October today, also known in this industry as Uptober, right? But also Q4, I think, should be, a lot of people thinking we're in for a positive Q4, myself included. That does not mean, however, you should be overexposed to these markets or in a situation to be uncomfortable. I'm not saying you are, but if this applies to anyone, then what you can do is you can look at these situations, and as you start to drive up, nice. Well, just if you like the project, I don't really see any major kind of turns against it at the moment. The best kind of recipe for that is buying these dips and bringing your average price down. Always a difficult thing to do. You want to be buying euphoria and selling, but unfortunately, it's just not the way the markets really work. But if you add on any dips, I think it's good. I think XRP looks solid at the moment. And again, as long as we hold this level here, I think it's in a good position to push higher. All right. Right. Let's take a look at Asta. That's great to hear. So, man. Right. Asta. Where are we with Asta? As we can see, there's not really a lot to write home about on the daily. It's very, very new. Why am I invested in Asta? Well, I'm just buying the dips on this at the moment because CZ is really behind it. My fundamental team absolutely love it. I can understand that this could really be one of the runners. It's going to be able to make a lot of noise in the space. And obviously just the side of the business really makes sense as well. So looking at this here, we're currently getting an underside retest of this level, right? This is really, really key for me because as we're looking at this, it was basically on the lower time frames, looking at price being trapped between here and here. We see the long absorption coming into here. If we draw this back across to here, we saw the same here. We got this deviation, price close underneath, retest, sell off, retest, sell off, retest, sell off. But each time ping-ponging, finding support. We then saw this weakness through here, and now price has sold off below this. Safest play for me here on Asta would be to see price back within here, right? And then make sure we're looking at this here. And what we want to see in here is similar to this, right? So it's seeing, price coming into here, and then these wicks into the downside that are telling us or give us an indication that buyers are willing to step in. Look how we didn't obviously get that with that one. So now we're pushing back here for the retest. It's a little bit of a tricky one. If we were to get super aggressive with this, we can see that we've just started to recover structure here on the hourly. This was a move that I really like. Saw this play out this morning. Again, you'll see this on my chart as a breaker line. I'm just looking for this, the up move here before price sweeps liquidity. I'm looking to take that high. Not a trade I'm in, by the way, but it's definitely one of interest for me. I don't typically trade these type of assets intraday. I just use them. I'm much more a spot holder for crypto. But look, close above, retest. That's now, propelling price higher. If we're trending, setting higher highs, higher lows, or lower highs, lower lows, like in this example, when we break out, we're then just looking for the consolidations, or in these case, the bearish candles, the down close candles here to support price. Then when we see here, you step into this consolidation, right? Then you're looking for price to show its hand. If it breaks out, reclaims the range, chances are it heads for the highs. If we break out, and I'm using this as kind of a pseudo range here, right? And so price comes in, sets the low, sets the high, sets the low, sets the high, breaks out, closes below, which you hadn't done before. Then you start to see the absorption from the wicks and price sells off. If, however, we'd step back in this area quicker, then we could look for expansion into the highs. Ultimately, obviously, we didn't. So this is an important value area here, for price to get back into. So balanced, out of balance, new balance. Now we're saying, okay, is the market now moving out of balance again? Are we seeing aggression from the buyers here? And if we are, I'd like to see price back up in this upper range. And that means getting ourselves closed back above here. Then any deviations of the lows from here, I think are buying opportunities for me to add a little bit more. The other option, which I didn't do actually, I'm a little bit annoyed at myself because I did want to buy this dip down here, but I really did feel like this thing, just because of how well it had been doing, it consolidated here for a while. I think a lot of people were asking, if this was kind of losing its momentum. When you see that kind of narrative, you can often get big flushes as you get these cascades. And I got a little bit greedy wanting to buy back here again. These were my kind of original buys here on Asta. But we haven't got it. Maybe we do get it. Either way, I'm looking at this at the moment to say, this is a project I'm interested in long term. So what's my plan and thought process for that is I just want to buy it as low as I can, right? Burnside, my man, nothing wrong with that. I don't mind that short from here. Like I said, I'm not an intraday trader of these, right? But if I was to look at this, as a potential short setup here, right? I like it. You're smashing back into resistance. Well, crypto has been weak, right? It's a very tricky one at the moment. Like I say, from my perspective, I'm looking at this as, you know, adding to my bags as such. So I'm not looking at it from that. But what I would say is, you know, if I look to short an asset like this, I look for it to normally lose the consolidation that led to the pump. Just an example of that would be here. Yeah, so price moving up here. We see a sweep of a high. We see price start to break down here. So as we break down, this is where we get our structural shift from this low. Great. What do we do in this process? This down candle here becomes the breaker, all right? So what I'm interested in here is when price breaks below this, we see the retest, original sell-off, secondary retest, larger sell-off, and then often when we see these areas mitigated, let me just do it as a box, right? Close above, pull back to the area, and now price moving higher. So that's what I, you know, there was advice that was given to me probably, well, longer ago than I would care to say, and it would have been on FX before it was pre, you know, crypto, or certainly before my kind of real time in crypto, you know, looking for that little bit of confirmation within here. Or, you know, sometimes you're trying to catch a falling knife off the lows, never really know which ones are the key lows to get. You know, you might try and grab this here, it comes back up, takes you out. Looking for the breakouts of the consolidations here can be a really good way to do it. The other thing you can do is look for your CVD as well. See if you're getting divergences here on the CVD. Does the chart agree with what's going on in terms of volume? If we look at this here, right, we can see at the moment, this high, that's a lower high here. So at the moment, they're in agreement, all right? But what you want to look for are your divergences, either, you know, off the lows if you're looking to go long here, right? Because look at this. This was actually a beauty. So we're looking at the low of the CBD here, and we're aligning it with this, right? So I'm going to do it on the chart first. Apologies if you're CBD traders, but sometimes these things are helpful for other people. So just bear with me for a moment. There we go. So see how on the price we align it with the chart. Here, we got the low. Here, yeah, what does price do? So it's a lower low. So if we now open the CBD, which is down here, and draw the same thing in here and align it with this, we can see that actually from the volume perspective, I mean, this thing gapped up wildly, but it's got a higher low. Volume's disagreeing massively with what we're seeing on the chart, meaning that we could very well, yeah, be in for a pump here, and you want price action to match this. We then get a little secondary one here, as we see this move here move lower, a more localized one, this low to this low moving down, and we didn't get that through here. This was up, all right? Only a little bit, but these subtle kind of changes when we're looking at volume can be really, really, really helpful. And I love using the CVD for that if I need that little bit of extra confluence, all right? So again, nothing wrong with that, mate. Look, you've got your plan burn side. I respect that massively, mate. It's certainly not for me to tell you what to do there. I admire anyone that's you know, willing to put themselves on the line and trade in any way. You know, it's an incredibly fun, intoxicating world to be in, as well as being incredibly frustrating and sometimes absolutely maddening. Yarrick, it was 4:30 in the morning. All right, give me a break, Yarrick. You're right, it was 4:30 in the morning, but you know, you could always get up a little bit earlier, right? No, I'm joking. Well, I'm not 4:30 for you though, right? In the wonderful motherland of Poland. But yeah, you're right. Again, this is where these things all come in, right? That's where there has to be a caveat instilled in this. You're either staying up around the night like we used to when we used to trade with SC. He is unbelievable. He's just an animal, you know. And he's right. If your system's firing and things are working out really well, you're catching all these trades. Just trade until it breaks or you break. But I was, you know, I was in my late 20s then, I think, early 30s. So very different animal to my age now. Okay, anyway, so where does that leave us? Asta. Hopefully that's a good plan for you guys there on Asta. Again, look, if I'm averaging into this, if we got to move lower down here, I would buy out these lows. I would buy out these lows again, just add, because I really do think this is going to melt at some point. So where are we now? Oh, stable as well. I've got a big old bag of stable. So this was quite nice. We had a big, nice dip on this. So as discussed with the team previously, this was a key area of here, supporting price through here and here. Expect this to offer resistance as it did. No interest in shorting this. Key plan here, and it's such a simple one, right? and see where I've got my alerts set on this, right? So this is the consolidation I'm really interested in. This is the origin breakout of these highs. That was the impulse move higher. Obviously, this area never really got a retest. So if we'd lost this, if we started to see 4-hour closes below this, retested this level, I would be looking to buy quite heavily down here. As it goes, I want to now see us back above this, right? And, full disclosure, I sold Asta here. Yeah, not all of it, but I sold about 40%, I think. And then I sold about another 15% down here when we started to break down. I bought back about 20% here. And I didn't get filled on this, which was really, really weird. So I need to look into that anyway. But I still think this is a good area to add some more. Like I said, I'll have some orders placed down there as well, but also happy to buy a little bit more here on the breakout of this. Because for me, this is that kind of area controlling the market at the moment. This was the consolidation before the pump that took us to new highs, found support here again. Buyers really tried aggressively to get this thing moving higher. And again, look what happens when those buyers are taken out. We often see retests of this area. They mitigate, cover, step away, join the trend lower, and price has popped. But the fact it's holding this level, I think, looks really good. So I would be a happy buyer of stable here, and I would not panic if it broke back down. I would just happily add maybe a little tickle more at this consolidation here, but this is where I'd really be kind of filling my bags on that one. So let's take a look at Solana. Probably similar kind of situation here, right? We were looking for this here, we were looking for this here, which we didn't get. We just got the deviation above. Price did come in, by the way, look. This was the move we were looking for. We did get the expansion, we did get the retest, and like we said, we take it to all-time highs. Big wick at all-time highs, price comes back down, gets back underneath this area that was so key in holding price up. These will normally be blue. I was just doing it to kind of stand out for everybody watching. Breakdown below resistance, price breaks above, got back down below this here, and then look how it's just drawing back up to this area, these prior consolidations. It really didn't want it, and then it really broke down. So again, I think this is quite a key area through here, but we will take a look at that. On the daily scale, right, this was, let me see, that's the weekly here as well. This was the weekly order block or area of demand. Yeah, so again, look, these areas, down close candle, price closes above, retest, move up. Down close candle, price closed above here, retest, move up. Down close candle, price closed above, retest, now price is moving up. We just want to trade these type of things until it breaks, really. Just the higher the time frame you can frame these things on, the more you'll kind of, or the less anxiety you'll give yourself. All right, I'm going to get rid of this here because this is from all the way back here. This was the breakout of this level we were looking for. Reason it was key back here as well is we never got a clean retest of this. So when price came into this and closed straight into it was a little bit of a worry. We got a nice wick here, and then you wait for that secondary candle to show you expansion. It didn't, just kind of died out underneath. So we're going to get ready for that now. As we look through here, yeah, on the daily scale, we can see the prices holding this level, key consolidation again, just for consistency, going to move this back to blue now. Now you guys know what's going on. There we go. So price driven down, take out liquidity below those lows, now getting itself in a nice kind of resurgence here. Something that's a little bit tricky here. For me, especially on the daily, is the price grinding into these levels, yeah, but not very clean. Would you wait for a kind of a breakout back above this? This offered resistance, this. So that's why we were really focused on the 4 hour, right? And again, like we've seen on Bitcoin, we want to see that structure start to come in, yeah? We want to see these consolidations, yeah? We want to see breakouts of those consolidations, breakouts of those consolidations, breakouts of those consolidations, price ultimately moving higher. This, I think, still stays really relevant within here because this is the real consolidation that led to the very aggressive sell-off. You could argue it's this as well, but I do like this area. We've got inefficient price moves above it. I think we can get above here. Yeah, looking for this type of play on Solana. All right, so that's getting itself back above about 220, 221 area here on Binance. And then we're targeting this consolidation up here that led to the breakdown. Yeah, so level to level, reclaim this, play the strength up to this level, take some profit here, wait for this level to be broken out again, and then obviously really kind of trading this up into the local highs, and then obviously beyond that as well. Let's take a look at ZEC. What a beast, huh? Right. Hello. Did someone say buyers stepping in or? Right. So looking at this on the weekly, obviously the weekly looks great. It just looks bullish as anything. If we zoom back out, we can see we've got the highs back here. So we've got nothing but liquidity drawing this higher. I would say probably a little interesting point here, because again, if I'm squeezing the chart up, I'm looking for these key downside wicks, and then I'd want to trace back and look for the upside wicks as well, just finding these pivot points where, buyers were, ultimately fending off the sellers. And then when those areas are lost, sellers really take control of the market. So we've got this key sell-off here, and we have this series of pumps through here. So I'm going to start by adding a line like we've done previously, just see how much of this we can get in, which isn't too bad, right? But now we're going to try and refine that a little bit better with a box. We're going to say, okay, if that's the kind of area we're looking at through there, if we then want to get these parts in, I don't think that's bad, actually. I think we can clearly see this as an area of interest. Tried to hold support here, close below it, retest, sell off, retest, sell off, retest, sell off, retest, sell off. And then this is the important thing for me here. Look how price just, get rid of that now. How price closes above, retest, buyers, sellers aggressively trying to just break this down here. They can't do it. So buyers step in again, offers great support all the way through here until it's lost. Even there actually is very, very clean, because we can see, look, we did close below this a little bit here, but then quickly reclaimed it. And then the downside wicks tell you the buyers are there. Buyers tried to get this pumped back above and again, but then look when we get the close below, how those long wicks switch to the upside as people then get on board with the downtrend. So as we look at this moving across, we're kind of in this area here at the moment. So we've had this pump. I think this offers a really lovely opportunity through here to look for a couple of different types of plays. Let's just move this across. So again, the strong breakout play, the retest, and then price moving up from here, holding this level, wicks below are fine, but bodies to hold this level. Or I think, what would be equally nice is this, and then a return either to these gaps here or maybe to this consolidation before that leads to the leg up, right? Just allows us to play it from a little bit of a safer perspective, all right? Wisdom, thank you, mate. That's far too kind of you. Come on, Jarek, it's before the watershed, surely, even in Poland, right? So I think that's a really, really clean move there. I think strong move up into this at the moment. I think a lot of people are going to be FOMOing into this, and I think that's a little bit difficult. Do you know what, Wisdom? I don't really know, my friend. I'm much more of a trader. I do understand, obviously, the broader kind of ecosystem of crypto. There's just so many to stay on top of now. And where I'm absolutely blessed, and I appreciate this isn't the case for most people, is that I have an incredible trading team around me, right? So we cover everything from fundamental news, narratives, looking at technicals, on-chain, everything like that. Fundamentals obviously being really huge. But then, the flip side of that, guys, by the way, a lot of people say this. They're like, oh, you have trading, you have that advantage being in a trading company. We absolutely do, right? But you can do that yourselves. Find really, really good people, find a good community. Obviously, I'm going to tell you to come and try ours over at the Birb Nest. And if you are interested in that, you can find information in the description below. But just find really good people, right? And just remove all the noise from your Twitter. Twitter, for me, when I look at it, I'm using it either as a social experiment, meaning that I want to probe and find out how bullish or bearish people are, which gives me an idea of the market sentiment at the time. A lot of other people are better at that than me, so I typically follow those people. If not, my feed is just full of people I massively respect, people whose information I can use to test my own. Someone who's, I will see someone like Macro Alf, for example, who will post something, or Chris Crypto Assessor, for example, or, Follis, or someone that will be looking at a specific level. I think really interesting. I know these guys are super, super switched on. They're absolutely linked in. I've obviously got my amazing team with me as well, right? Traders like Just Pit, Trading Tank, right? Resumed, hugely experienced traders, people like KZM as well. Obviously, Crypto Birb. Not many people have been more successful in crypto than him. And people really don't appreciate what an exceptionally talented and educated trader he is. He's a CMT level 3, I think the only one in Poland, one of the only ones in Europe. But yeah, if you want to create that, come and find good communities and just really immerse yourself in them. We get loads of people come over to TBN and, or hesitant at the beginning to ask questions. And we're just like, no, this is exactly the forum to be asking questions. And the more people ask, the more you want to learn. But just surround yourself with good people. Find really good fundamental analysts. Find people that are really switched on, really in link with the kind of macro side, and then plug that into your own models. It's kind of like creating your own little trading pod. Yeah. Let's take a little look. What have we got? Sounds like a poem. Yeah, I would be a terrible poet. Dr. Bin, hello, bro. Could you check out my project, please? I'm afraid I can't, my friend. But what you can absolutely do is contact the team. Yeah, like Jojo said, drop us a line at the team. We've got a whole wonderful business development team, people that look at these projects, be more than happy to give you some advice. Wisdom Liners, well, thank you, my friend, as well. Yarrick, yeah, Nest is great. Thank you, mate. We love it over there. Ultimately, just some of my favorite people in the world and a really, really good community. So I don't sit here and shill these things. I think it's up to people to find their way with these things. But obviously, I'm going to recommend what we do as well. Johnny England, you're very welcome, mate. Hopefully, it was helpful. Like I say, I think this could really just explode. There could be a fundamental driver behind this that I don't understand, or maybe I'm not in tune with. But what I can definitely see here is that we kind of had a consolidation within here, right? Before price got out of that and then really sold off. So we want to see price back in this range, really. Even imagine this is the point here, maybe even getting back up into this and spending a bit of time here and then looking for the breakout of this range here for the next leg up. But let's take it one step at a time and look for it to get above this level here. I think pullbacks on this look really healthy for a dip buy, or wait for that breakout above it. All right. Let's have a look. Finding positive and supportive community. Yeah, it's really, really key. It'll really help bring the best out of you. I was very fortunate in my early days of trading. The people that I managed to find, people I trade like Larry Williams, was really, really, really key. I think we just had a little bit of a tweak out there on the stream. Hopefully that's okay. So privacy coin, 20 million supply, and 8-year compression. I love everything about that, Johnny. Sounds like it's ready to melt faces, doesn't it? So I think you've picked an absolute winner there, my friend, which is absolutely wonderful. Right. So anyway, before I remiss, I'm always overrunning on these shows. I know. Let's take a look at FET. So this is where we are on FET. Holding this level quite nicely here, right? This was the key area we were looking at. All right, taking it back here as well. Again, this prior consolidation, this is where the buyers stepped in. If I look at the whole kind of consolidation area here, big obnoxious color, what happened? Price came in, initially found support, flushed out the lows. What happened? This induced lots of sellers. People that held on to that too long, what happened? People came back in. We came back into the range. What's this here? They were the aggressive sellers, right? What are they now? Absolutely screwed as price comes back in. So what choice do they have? If they were willing to hold through all this drawdown and get back to here, then absolutely God bless them. And their their absolute stalwart commitment to staying short this asset. But what I would imagine is these kind of breakouts here, people started to get out of this position. All right. So we just want to see this area hold, but I've refined this down to this area here. This was kind of the gap, this rejected price. We inverted this gap, came back above it. Now this area is finding support. So for FET here on the weekly, I would really like to see it above here. Okay, this is going to be our breaker line, as we discussed on previous assets. It's the up move or the consolidation before the flush. We want to see those people in pain, price closing back above here, and we look to get our buyers in here. And this is just pre-made liquidity targets up there for us. So looking for FET to hold this level on the weekly, want to see it above 0.6590 here on Binance. Right, let me also take a look here on the daily first. So we see the daily deviating down below these levels. Where could we get a sneaky early stage aggressive trade in if we absolutely had to? Again, I would be looking for this, right? This is the top of the consolidation here. Price pinged out at the bottom of this. If we were to use, for example, a volume profile here as we come back in and we start the consolidation, we can see Price driving down into the low volume areas down here. Price reclaiming the range back above the POC here. Now, this means it's back in the range here. It doesn't mean it's not going to reject at the range high. The range high up here is aligned with the breaker candle. So what we want to see is a strong move above this. Daily close above this. And again, looking for this area to get retested. That's where we want to get our buyers in here on FET. I wouldn't want to take that any lower than that, actually, because I think this is just so clean here. And let's not forget, we've got this kind of support resistance area that we want to see. This is the deviation and price coming above. So arguably an even cleaner way to look at this is if we did get a reclaim through here, price breaks above, comes back down, finds support on this, and then moves higher. The support could also be found here. All right. Beautiful. And now CRV, and then we are done, ladies and gentlemen. Goonies, hello, mate. Fellow Arsenal, fellow London and football fan. I'm a West Ham fan for my sufferings. So, yeah, I think we all know who's laughing at the moment about that. Although very, very happy with Nuno's appointment, someone I've admired for a long time. But this is not a football show. Anyway, software, this is TradingView, my friend. I think we've definitely got a partnership with TradingView. We'll give you some deals if you want to take anything down in the description or reach out to us. But by all means, you get yourself in there direct as well. You can sign up for a free account, and then they do have paid plans as well. Right, so C to the R to the V. What have we got going on with you? God, this looks like a beautiful golden pocket retrace here. A little bit deeper, actually. Losing me touch. It was a 786. Ripped through the golden pocket. Want to see it back above that. Interesting one here, actually, on CRV. Looks a little bit weak still. Maybe starting a little bit of a resurgence here, but tricky with this, right? Because what we have done nicely here is we've started to break out of this consolidation. This wasn't really a break because we didn't really sweep any liquidity. So this is much more of an order block. You'll see those, are an area of demand. The price is trying to set this demand, taking out some liquidity, breaking out above, looking to hold this area now, right, as we see these wicks come back down. So we could see some expansion above this. I think if I was looking for continuation here, I would look for the daily close here. The daily to close above this down close candle here, and then pullbacks to here to long. All right, so let's take a look at the 4 hour. Yeah, we can see some nice aggression coming in here in the pump. Price sellers have now been taken out here. So the big question is, if price comes back to here, are they holding through the drawdown, expecting price to get back below these levels and sell off, or are they now convinced this market's going up as well? In which case we see a pullback to this area, ready to long. And this is an aggressive play here on CRV because we haven't really regained any kind of structure or bits and pieces at the moment. So that's where we need to be careful. But if you wanted to be a little bit, it's not as clean as I would like. But if I was trying to get through all of that here, I don't like violating the bodies on these type of plays, but I do think this fits very, very clean here. Obviously resistance. So what would be a super safe play would be this. This is a bearish gap, right? So we would expect this to reject price. So what we want to see is price come up and close above this, take out this trend line, come back down here for support, and then look to build and move higher. Yeah, if we came back down underneath the trend line, we would look for underside retests of that. Something I think that would add a little bit of extra spice into this, actually. Seeing it here would be this. And yes, you are obviously going to buy this a lot higher if that happens, but something like this for the aggressive plays, or something like this, yeah, utilizing the breaker again, kind of making sure we've got a little bit more confirmation and then looking to move up from there. What do we flappy hands, keep a West Ham, please. Yes, love that. Little clap for the lads. Lord knows we've been through it. Shamey Doug, how you doing, mate? Great advice and clear to understand. Thank you very much, my friend. Any advice on timing for rotation into spot? I think I've really kind of got my eyes on the equity markets here. Okay, so while they continue to show strength, well, my actual plan is this, right? While equity markets continue to show strength, and my kind of real key focus on this is the NASDAQ and the S&P 500. So this is the NASDAQ represented by the NQ contract. What I'm typically looking for here is threefold, and unfortunately, TradingView's having a little bit of a freeze. Maybe too many people trying to get involved. Let's wait, see if it kicks back in. Well, while that's going on, what I'm looking at is the dollar has been getting absolutely trashed for a while. There's slightly different factors going into that as well. So we want to be careful there because, that was always a great proxy, a great confluence, a great point of confluence or counter confluence, however you look at it. Basically, if DXY was weak, you'd normally see strength in risk assets. Okay, so what we're looking for here is we're saying, well, the dollar's been weak for quite a while. Fine. I want to use the volatility index as well, which is the VIX. I'm going to show you that. So typically, one of my main trading screens will look like this. All right, but we will have the DXY up here. And then you got the VIX, the volatility index down here. Right, now with the VIX, this is important for me. There's a few different ways to interpret this. The red line, by the way, represents the NASDAQ and the VIX is here in yellow. So the best way to kind of think about this is it's almost like a kind of fear index for the for risk assets in traditional markets, all right? Because what you can see quite clearly here in the correlation, or hopefully anyway, is as the VIX is dropping, we get this nice resurgence. You get this nice pumps, all right? So again, when the VIX spikes, look at what happens here to the NASDAQ. NASDAQ is coming down. So the NASDAQ's the red, VIX is the yellow. So this is something that I'm watching, all right? But also levels, all right? Typically and historically, if we look at this from a traditional market perspective, risk assets perform well when this is under 20, when the VIX is under 20. And not so well when the VIX is above 20 or 30. So we're looking at this kind of sweet spot. As we can see here, VIX spiking up above 30 here. Look what happened to the price of the NASDAQ. Henceforth, we can see price, all right, kind of chopping up slowly here, but price holding down below. Again, when we see these spikes up on the VIX, we often see these sell-offs in risk assets. This is what we want to see, really. You can see this nice and clearly here. Price, the VIX getting back down below 20, selling off, and just kind of holding this level on a slow decline, giving all this room to breathe for risk assets. So that's something that I'm factoring in. When the VIX starts to get above 20, I'm going to get a little bit cautious. When it gets above 30, I'm going to get very cautious, as I want to go across then and look at the dollar index. The DXY is something that I break down into ranges. So let's take a look at this here quickly. Let me just get rid of the session break so it doesn't look so clustered. All right, so as we can see at the moment, rejection from midline, price stepped back into the range here, a little bit messy, but it did come back in. We saw price move higher here. Now price is coming back down. When we start to see a lot of strength coming back into the dollar here, then that's when I'm going to be a little bit cautious towards risk assets. Hello, Burton. How are you doing, my friend? Rob Ball, you're very, very welcome, mate. So again, let's overlay on this. Let's get our little plus symbol up here. You get it right by the ticker, and then you can add an asset on there. So let's see how it's affected Bitcoin, for example. Right? And you can see how this correlation has been quite wild, right? Henceforth, if we're looking back here, and let's actually do this on the daily. And what we'll do is do that, and we'll switch our range off for a second as well. Yeah, typically suppression through here on the DXY. Sometimes, again, it helps if you do it as a line as well. But again, look, as DXY gets weaker here, we see the strength coming into risk markets, all right? And we can see that as we've got it here with Bitcoin. We can also add Ethereum. You can see Ethereum a little bit more wild because, again, it's fighting the liquidity battle here with Bitcoin as well, right? But again, look, ultimately, price kind of weakness here in the dollar, really good. But you can also see back here why it kind of flicks in and out of this correlation, because as price is kind of heading down here, we see risk markets heading down with the dollar. It does very much, it does matter heavily what the market's doing in terms of, when Trump came into the White House, for example, a lot of uncertainty coming in, trying to suppress the dollar. There's a load of different things that we need to factor in, right? But this is definitely something that I've got my eye on. Bitcoin dominance also as well. And then, the total charts, which we would be remiss for. All right, as we look at the total charts here, again, you can just go on here and you can say to yourself, all right, well, let's see the correlation here, for example, with the VIX. Yeah, so again, VIX being stable down here, we can see this has really helped the total charts. And again, if we're looking for this kind of breakout here, we want to see it above this level here. Yeah, about 1.15 trillion. When that starts to break out, we see that going crazy. That's going to be superb. On the other hand, obviously what we want to focus on in here, and let's do this quickly. Let's add Bitcoin. Yeah, what we want to see in here is the continuation of this uptrend, right? It doesn't take a genius to look at this and see how they're correlated, right? So whilst we see this move up in terms of market cap, this is ultimately going to be good for risk assets. So if we started to see ourselves break back down, especially if we start coming back down below the $1 trillion level here, I've got it marked at 987.03, just obviously under a trillion here. That's when I'd start to be a little bit cautious. All right. So factoring those things in can be helpful, mate. But key news drivers looking at the economy, especially the Fed, are the Fed continuing to cut rates? If inflation starts to spike and rear its ugly head again, and they don't really have an answer for it, they're not going to cut into an inflationary cycle. It's just, that's madness, right? So let's keep an eye on that. But ultimately, what we want to see is moving into 2026, led through for a nice Q4 here going into 2026, where we have stable GDP in the US as well. We've got interest rates remaining low, inflation flat, ideally falling, and obviously the growth in the economy. They're normally things that are very, very difficult to balance, all right? So looking at those, if we see any major system shocks for that, then we could really start to see some pullbacks, all right? So thank you so much, everyone. It's been a really, really long show today, which I appreciate, but I do appreciate each and every one of you that's coming in to join us for this one. Just one thing to finish up with, loads of you reaching out, asking. I've got DMs flying off at the moment. I've got the team messaging me about coming in and joining us over at the Nest. You can actually get yourself free access to it at the moment for a month. Yeah, come in, find out if you like it or not. All you need to do is go over to the Birb Nest, go to the website, go to the Twitter profile, come and take a look at what we can see on the screen at the moment, which is a deal we've got with our friends over at OKX. You just need to go onto OKX, right? Deposit, I think it's a minimum of $100. Trade with that, buy yourself some spot. You also get 600 free SOPH or HUMA tokens, right? HUMA, which again, the reason I love these kind of things is you're just kind of getting it for nothing. They sit there. If those things have a run when the bullish market conditions come in, you just got yourself a load of free money. And if they don't, then they're backing it up by they're going to cover your costs to be a premium member at the Birb Nest for a month. Come in, grab all the trading team calls. They've been absolutely exceptional. Again, over a 70% strike rate through September, which has been a very choppy month, and a crazy return for members. You can go and see all of those stats live on the website, thebirbnest.com. That's BIRB. And if not, come and join us through OKX. Yeah, going to be looking forward to that. Going to be out in Dubai with these legends as well, I think, for Blockchain Life, and then again for BBW. So do come, do get in touch. If you want to come and join us for free, this is a great way to do it, all right? So really big thank you to everybody. Oh, hang on. So, sorry, just seen a couple of questions come in. Chart Soul, CMO chart. Yeah, Burton, you can dive into our live trading session, which is going to kick off in just over an hour, and we can chart it there for you as well. I've also charted Sol a little bit earlier in the video as well, mate, so you can take a look as soon as this finishes, and then we are good to roll. But yeah, unfortunately, speaking for an hour and 20 minutes, I do need to shut this down and get on with some other bits and pieces. But for members, I'll see you for our live trading show, which kicks off in about an hour and 10 minutes. Thank you so much, everyone. It's been an absolute blessing to be here with you all. Do trade safe, keep an eye on the news, be good to one another, enjoy yourselves, and hopefully we get this beautiful continuation of the bull market here. And I'll see you legends again on